All right, let's see what Carla has to say.
The one boundary I had that made men want me more. Let me tell you what it was. Hello, my name is Carla, and restoring healthy mindsets is my thing. The one boundary I always had in the dating scene was having a set curfew. Wait, what? Oh, yeah. I always let the man know that I needed to be home at a certain time. And believe me, they wanted to know when they can see me next. I never had to initiate anything.
Okay, so once again, classic cope strategy of all these women. They're all trying to invent these rules, regulations. In the end, they don't like guys like this. Okay, so when girls don't chase at all, they don't desire the man that much. So when they try to frame it like I never had to do anything, this is not in their interest. Even though they love to pretend like it is. Only this will only attract weak guys. That's the only thing you're going to be attracting. The guy is going to do anything for you, and you have to do absolutely nothing. This is the guy you're going to end up despising anyways. So keep preaching the gospel to you and all the girls that really love to pretend like you have power when in the end all you desire is the guy that you want to chase. But let's continue. Let's continue with the bull.
Because I left them wanting more.
It doesn't really work this way once again when it comes to the guy you really want. Because to be honest, the guy you really want, it's easy for him to get it elsewhere too. So let's not forget that detail.
And that instantly lets him know that I value my time, that with him or without him, I still have my own life. Men love women that respect themselves, especially women that respect their boundaries.
Yeah, when it comes to the boundaries, I think guys do like when girls have strict boundaries when it comes to everybody else, except for them, of course, obviously. And that should make perfect sense to anyone listening. And if it doesn't, well, don't know what to tell you, really.
We as women need to understand that and have that very clear. If a man does not like that or appreciate that, then he's scum.
So, of course, you can't have a good video of a girl breaking down some topic without insinuating that men are scum. There has to be some shaming language somewhere in here. So, yeah, the truth is, if a guy doesn't do, basically, let's translate this. If a guy doesn't do exactly what I tell him to do, he is scum. That's essentially what she's saying, right? Because she's saying boundaries. What she's referring to when she says boundaries is power. Okay? I'm going to do things on my terms, buddy. And if you don't like that or have a problem with that, then that's your problem. And not only that, actually, but you're also a bad person on top of that. It's all right. Makes sense, I guess.
Like, I'm sorry, that's just the truth. If a man
You're
can't
not sorry.
appreciate his woman or a woman that respects herself and respects her boundaries,
This whole respects herself, respects her boundaries. This is the classic thing. It's so subjective. What does that even mean, right? Like, define it for me. Respect my boundaries, respect things. Like, we all know how this really goes, okay? The guy that you really, really like, when you're around him, you don't really control yourself nearly as much as when you're around a guy that you don't care about as much. So, what exactly does this mean? What does this I respect myself mean? I value myself mean? So you're overinflating your own sense of value because you told yourself to make yourself feel better about decisions you made in the past, or maybe to rationalize a little bit as to why a relationship didn't work out in the past. It's always the same story, isn't it? It's always the same story.
then he is not of high value. Now, there's a
Yes, okay. So if he doesn't respect the fact that I've appropriated value to myself, he's not high value. Okay? More feminist, hyper logical talking points, of course.
difference because there's a lot of women that say they respect their boundaries, but they're just being entitled. And there's a woman that actually respects her boundaries.
Oh, and here's now a nice little no true Scotsman fallacy too. Oh, that a real woman wouldn't do that, right? A real woman respects her boundaries. No, no, she doesn't respect her boundaries like that. She actually respects her boundaries. So here we have the classic redefining every time into a real version, whatever that continuously subjectively represents, right?
And says no politely. And always remember
It's all mental gymnastics, after all.
this: people want what they cannot have. So now that you
So women want what they cannot have, and feminine men want what they cannot have. Masculine men aren't as concerned about this, and that's true. And when I define masculine, I mean guys that aren't over obsessed or worship emotions. Those guys aren't necessarily obsessed with things that they cannot get. They're actually generally pretty good about understanding hierarchy. They're pretty good at understanding where they stand and what they deserve and what they've earned in their life and what they can leverage for to get the next thing, because life reinforces these lessons for them. Okay. They can want the high rise building all they want, but if they don't have the money in the bank, they can't pretend to themselves. So they understand, hey, I can get this, and they work within their means. Right. It's not, this only applies to women and hyper feminine men, honestly.
You set a limit, it's going to set an incentive and it's going to make you
Setting false boundaries to try to what you're doing, you're trying to misrepresent value through scarcity. This is like common psychological warfare tactics, right? I mean, hey, he'll think I'm more valuable if I pretend to not be as available, right? And let's be honest, this is tried and true tricks. Nothing new here. If I were to tell a guy to do this, and I have told guys, of course, to do this at times to not be seem so desperate, I get called out for manipulation, right? When in reality, there's nothing wrong with being disciplined. So I'm okay with being disciplined, of course. I'm not opposed to this. I just find it funny how this girl is going to say this, right? But if I were to tell a guy to do this, then she would immediately turn around, most likely, and point the finger at me and say I'm teaching manipulation. So just an interesting side note. I mean, to me, I don't really care about it. If a guy bites on this, he's a sucker, if I'm being honest. So it's kind of his fault anyway. But I do like to notice how this is seen as appropriate, whereas if I were to do the opposite, it's not, for whatever reason.
more attractive, more appealing. For starters, having a boundary and respecting it will set you apart from a lot of people. It'll make you more valuable. So imagine having a curfew. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of girl cope again, right? Say one thing, but likely do the other. Unless you're okay being the dominant in your relationship, which most girls, they don't want to be the dominant. They might say they want to be the dominant one, but they don't desire this deep down. So now you're basically teaching girls that are scorned from past relationships on how to be more unhappy in the future and to continue staying scorned. And even when it doesn't work out in the relationship where they do have power, they're still going to turn around and blame the guy anyway. So, I mean, it's just a cycle of nonsense, if I'm being honest.